Doug and I are working on two projects right now. Another book together called The Perfectionist Turn, From Metanorms to Metaphysics, and then a smaller book called The Illiberality of Human Capabilities Liberalism. The latter book is going to be a critique of Amartya Sen and Martha Nussbaum's Human Capabilities Liberalism. The former book is obviously a continuation on our views about ethics, but here we're going to, in the Perfectionist Turn, concentrate on ethics, and we'll not do that much political philosophy. But in doing that, concentrating on ethics, I suppose the most difficult thing I find is being able to explain how it's true that ethical principles really matter, and at the same time making sure that that doesn't end up treating both individuals and their actions as mere instantiations of the principles. In other words, it's the struggle to make sure that ethical principles are used and they're vital, but they don't get turned into the actual subject matter of ethics. The actual subject matter of ethics must be the individual, the society, their problems and issues. That is what we're dealing with. And so you got to keep principles, but keep them, how do I want to say it, open-ended and aware of the context in which ethical problems come about. Too often, even virtue ethicists who say they're not going to be give you a rule book end up giving you a rule book. And any ethical theory that wants to emphasize practical wisdom as much as we do in our theory, we've got to somehow work with this. And it ends up being more difficult than you think. And and I'm in a current survey of a lot of the contemporary ethical theories. We see over and over again the saying, well, no, I don't want to reify principles, and yet they end up being reified. So anyway, so that's a real problem. I think probably the people would say about our argument defending liberalism in all our works is that what we show is that liberalism is in principle possible, but we don't show that it's a real possibility. In other words, people say to you, well, Rasmussen, that's all fine and good, but are people really up to that? And it's a question about how philosophy relates to the real world. And I'm not a rationalist. I don't think I think reality is intelligible, reality is rational, but I don't think rationality is reality. I think there's a difference between our reason and the real. Reason's a tool. It isn't the real. Knowledge is of reality. Knowledge isn't reality, if you follow me. And so I think it's a difficulty because when we have abstractions and we have concepts, when we form them, we omit a lot of details. We don't deny them, we omit them. But those details will bite us in the butt. They will affect the plausibility of what will happen. And so the world isn't a deductive system. It isn't just a set of theories. And so you have to acknowledge that at best maybe what you can show in philosophy is what's possible in principle, but the actually really seeing it done, that's another matter. Well, I'm going to make a comparative judgment. Compared to what? To what it was when I started really getting involved with this, which would be the late 60s. I think it's great. I think there are more philosophers that take seriously liberalism as we're talking about it here than ever before. I think we could talk, we'd go through naming a lot of people, but I mean, I think there's a lot more. I think there's a lot more published, a lot more done. I think there's been definite progress, and they're not only in terms of how Denial and I would approach things, but other approaches to it. And so I think there's a lot of good things that are out there. Now, if the question is, but is this view a minority view among academics? Surely it is a minority view, and it's also the case that the real question is how many people, philosophers that have this sort of liberal understanding, how many of them are at the very, very top universities and the graduate programs? And to be quite honest, I can only think of about one person. And so I mean that's on the negative side of it, I suppose. But it's sort of interesting. Here we are this is 2010, and in many respects we're seeing the character of our society change, I think, radically. And maybe we won't be able to change this change. Maybe it's irreparable, what's happening. But it's sort of ironic that this is happening now, and at the same time, I think the arguments on behalf of the liberal political order are stronger than ever, which may mean there's hope in the future. Who knows? I would get education out of the hands of the government. I would do anything and everything to encourage alternative ways of getting education, alternative ways of getting information out, anything that goes around the structures, the mazes that we're supposed to run through. I think technology. I think individual initiative. I think people in general are beginning to realize that much that passes for education isn't authentic education, and so I think that would be the first thing that I would want to emphasize. I think another thing that needs to be done is, if liberalism is to really be successful, it's got to make a transition from abstract philosophical talk to talk that's more accessible to people. And so we need writers, we need people in the arts, we need journalists, we need people that understand the more philosophical, abstract statements, but they express it in ways that are more accessible, as I said. I think that needs to be done. But then again, I mean, I think I also want to say is that people should really question the premise, just because something is good, therefore it ought to be done by government. I think it's really a non sequitur to go from something is good, therefore the government should do it, or something is bad, therefore the government should prohibit it. I think people ought to learn that that's just a gap there and start questioning that. And so anything that would sort of straightforwardly at a common sense level emphasize that, I'd like to see. I mean, to some extent, philosophers, we try to, we do write letters to the editor and that, and I remember I've had a letter or two published by the Wall Street Journal and that, and it always amazes me how long it takes to write a 160-word letter as opposed to a larger essay. I mean, you sweat bullets over it. And so that may mean something about my own skills, or it may mean also that we need all sorts of different types of people working on communicating a knowledge and a big division of labor point. But if rock bottom, if I had to say anything, get education out of the hands of government.